Fear Not, Episode 118. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by dmcclarin. Welcome, Deidre. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Are you ready to fear not today?
Absolutely.
At age 19, Deidre's life transformed from that of a college student to that of a wife and mother. This life-changing experience helped her to reach her current philosophy on living life filled with promise and change, rooted in faith and hope. Despite challenges she has faced, Deidre's optimistic outlook has fueled her determination to make a change in her life. Optional Optimism, It's All in How You Look at It, Deidre's first book, shares her story and approach to embracing optimism with others. Deidre, could you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Sure. I spent about 25 years working in corporate America, and it was approximately about 10 years ago that I realized I wanted to do something more in my life. At that time, I was not able to identify exactly what that was, but it was later revealed to me, and hence optional optimism. I guess you could say in my spare time, I enjoy spending time decorating and spending time with my family and friends, but I especially love spending time with my 3 grandchildren.
Deidre, would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears you've had to face?
Yes. The biggest fear I would say that I've had to face in my life was when I was pregnant with my first child. The doctor informed me that the baby would most likely be born without limbs. His diagnosis, it was based on test results, which were in part based on information that I had provided. But needless to say, I was sad. I was scared out of my mind. I said, how am I going to do this? And despite the diagnosis, my husband and I, we still love the baby regardless and just, vowed to do all that we could for the baby. Anyway, a few weeks passed, and I realized that some of the information I provided to the doctor was incorrect. I shared this new information with the doctor. He consulted with some specialists and informed me that based on the new information that we should have a healthy baby. So now, several years later, I realized that I actually feared the unknown. I looked at what I wasn't going to have, a healthy baby, instead of looking at what I was going to have, which would have been a baby with special needs.
So how did you handle that?
Well, literally, it was prayer. It truly was prayer, and that's all I can say. I didn't really look at the situation in terms of I didn't look at it as a fearful situation at that time. I just said I had to manage it. It was what was facing me, and I just said that I refuse to let this situation destroy my marriage or my baby or my husband. Let me rephrase that. It wasn't going to destroy my marriage, my life, or me. And so I just have always been, even at that age, just a very positive person. And so I just started to look at it instead of what are you going to do? It was now, this is what you have to do.
Would you say that this, because I know your book is, optional optimism, and it's all about perspective. I'm assuming this is how that you deal with fear on whatever form it takes and how and when it approaches your life.
Absolutely. From that day, and even before that day, but ever since that day especially, I don't look at fear as an obstacle. I look at it as you could say, for instance, think of a rung on a ladder. And if you can see where you're trying to go and you're on this ladder and you're trying to get there and you just look at fear as being a rung on the ladder. And if you can get past that rung, then you are, getting closer to achieving whatever it is you're trying to do. And I'm a firm believer you've got to conquer your fear. Otherwise, it can destroy you.
So how did you get to that point? Were there books that you've read? I know that you mentioned prayer, so I'm assuming faith had a large part in this perspective that you have. Could you possibly share some other things that you've come across that have helped you to get to this point in your life?
Sure. It would be just a lot of different situations that I've encountered growing up, I wouldn't say growing up, but as a young adult. Just a lot of situations that I've encountered. And I actually mentioned some of these in the book. I just dealt with them head on. I realized some of the choices I made as a young adult were not the best decision, but I never looked at it as being the end of the world. I always looked at it, okay, well, where do we go from here? Where do I go from here? And what can I do to, make things better? I think if you dwell on what has happened in the past, it's very difficult to look forward. And so in that regard, I just, I say, actually, I have this phrase in my book, the past is in the past, may it rest in peace. I think the past may play an important role in where you're going, but I don't think it's necessarily helpful to hold on to the past. You always never want to forget where you've come from, but at the same time, you have to understand that you've got to kind of leave the past there. Remember some of the things that you've learned in the past so that you can move forward.
What could you recommend for us to be able to do that? Because that's, sometimes it's a lot easier said than done. And, a lot of people have a tendency to cling to the past. So what advice could you give us to not do that anymore?
I would say if you look at one of the quotes I have in my book, is I said, the past is a stepping stone to the future. So I'm always grateful for my past, even though you may not like it, because your past is what positions you to where you are today. So if you have never if you never experienced, say, a certain situation, it may not have put you in the position that you're in today to experience what you're experiencing today. And hopefully that's good. But if it's not, you look back and you go, well, what could I do differently? One of the things that I encourage my readers to do in the book is I have a section called Fear Not, and I try to encourage the reader to challenge their perspective. And in this exercise, what I do is I have some statements. They're called I statements that create fear, I statements that conquer fear. And to give you an example, one of the statements is, I'm afraid to pursue what I want, or I'm not afraid to pursue what I want. And so you're asked to check which one applies to you. And then a little bit later on, you're asked that same question, and it's, I'm afraid to pursue, and the question becomes, I should say, I'm afraid to pursue what I want because, and I'm not afraid to pursue what I want because. And in so doing, now you're actually writing down, you're coming face to face with why you feel the way you do about that particular fear. And you're better able to address it than just, it's something to just kind of say it and to know it. But when you actually write it down, I think it takes you further into understanding yourself. And then for the person who, for instance, does not have that fear, I'm not afraid to pursue what I want, because that just reinforces their level of, or their strength, their confidence in themselves, which, is going to better position them to move forward toward their goals and dreams.
Are you ready for the speed round?
Yes.
What individual, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
That would be my daughters, my two girls.
And if you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would you change?
If I could change one thing in the world, it would be a cure for cancer. I've had so many members of my family that have been stricken with this awful disease, and it would just be, I don't even know what the word would be, but it would just be awesome. And that's saying it mildly, putting it mildly, to be able to eradicate this disease altogether.
What's your biggest weakness?
Relaxing.
What's your biggest strength?
My self-confidence and persistence.
If you could only have one book to read, what book would that be?
One book to read. If I had to say just one, it would be the Bible for sure. But if I had to pick, can I pick another? If I had to pick another, I just look for books that are uplifting, that are that help me be a better me. Books that offer hope.
Do you have a favorite sound?
Gospel music.
And Deidre, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to reach me would be optionaloptimism.com.
And what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
My parting advice would be that it's not how your situation looks to you, but how you choose to look at your situation. It's all in how you look at it.
Well put. And I also want to let everyone know, too, that Deidre has generously donated a copy of her book and journal to be given away. So if you'd like an opportunity to win that book, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com and submit your free entry form today. Deidre, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, sharing your story, and sharing some of the techniques that are in your book that we can actually use in our lives. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.